All right, so get ready. We're diving deep today. You know, y- you send in that Wikipedia article about radiation,
Yeah.
and wow, this stuff, it's way more interesting than I thought. Turns out radiation is literally everywhere.
It really
But
is.
it's like this invisible force, kind of a mystery.
Yeah.
So that's our mission today. We got to
Oh,
unpack all this science, figure out how radiation can be good and bad at the same time.
right. How can something so powerful also be so beneficial?
Exactly. So what is radiation really? When I think of radiation, I think like danger,
Yeah.
glowing green stuff.
I know, right? Like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
But really, radiation is just energy on the move. Think of it like it's how the universe transfers energy.
Yeah.
It can be waves or particles. Doesn't matter.
So like, it's not all bad.
No, not at all. Even the light from that lamp over there or the heat coming from a radiator,
Right.
those are both forms of radiation.
Oh, wow.
What people usually think of as like the dangerous, scary radiation, and that's what we call ionizing radiation.
Okay, so ionizing radiation, that's the one we got to watch out for.
It is, yeah.
What makes it so different from the other types?
It all comes down to energy levels.
Right.
Ionizing radiation, it's got enough energy to actually knock electrons off of atoms.
Mm.
And that can cause some serious problems, disrupting cells, damaging DNA.
Oh, wow.
It's like a tiny little bullet, but invisible, that can just wreak havoc in your body.
That does not sound good.
No, it doesn't. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Ionizing radiation, it can also be used for good.
Really?
Yeah, think about it.
Yeah.
Like X-rays. Doctors use those all the time.
Yeah.
Or cancer treatments. That's ionizing radiation too.
Oh, right. I never thought of it like that.
And in research, they use it to analyze materials, even authenticate like old artifacts and stuff.
Right.
So it really is a double-edged sword. It's powerful, yeah, but potentially dangerous if we're not careful with it.
I see.
It's all about balance.
That makes sense. You mentioned radioactive materials as a source of ionizing radiation.
Right.
So is that like the same stuff they use in nuclear power plants?
It is, yeah. Nuclear power plants use radioactive materials to generate energy.
Right.
But the thing is,
Yeah.
radioactive materials, they're not just man-made.
Oh,
You can find them naturally occurring, too.
what? Really?
Uh-huh. Like in rocks and soil.
So like in the ground?
Yeah. You're actually exposed to low levels of this natural radiation every single day, believe it or not.
Wait, so there's radioactive stuff like right under my feet?
There is. But don't worry.
Yeah.
It's usually in such small amounts, it's not anything to worry about.
Okay.
But it just goes to show, radiation, it's a natural part of our world. It's not all, lab created or whatever.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Yeah.
But okay, so how do we protect ourselves from the bad radiation, the higher levels, I mean?
Good question. See, different materials block or absorb radiation differently. It's called stopping power.
Stopping.
Yeah. So denser materials, things with a higher atomic number, like lead, those are really good at shielding us.
Oh, so like lead is what, like a radiation suit of armor?
Uh-huh. Kind of.
That makes sense. So wait,
Yeah.
so like different types of radiation, they need different types of shields, right?
Exactly.
Kind of like, I don't know, a sheet of plastic wrap will stop water,
Yeah.
but you need like a thick wall to stop a bullet.
Exactly. It's the same idea.
That's interesting. Okay, so speaking of different types of radiation,
Right?
the article mentioned UV radiation,
Yeah.
which, sunburns, all that.
Mhm.
But is all UV radiation ionizing?
That's a great question. And the answer is no.
Hmm.
Not all UV radiation is ionizing.
Okay.
Only the high energy part of the UV spectrum, that's the stuff that can knock electrons off atoms.
Right.
But luckily for us,
Yeah.
we've got the ozone layer. It acts like a giant sunscreen,
Okay.
filtering out most of the harmful UV from the sun.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So even though, we still got to be careful in the sun,
Oh, absolutely.
the ozone layer is doing a lot of the work for us.
It really is our first line of defense against those damaging rays.
That's awesome. So, all right, what about X-rays? We've all had those at the doctor's office.
Right.
What makes them so good for taking pictures of, our insides?
It's pretty cool. See, X-rays, they can pass through soft tissue like skin, muscle, all that, but they get absorbed by denser materials like bone.
Okay.
That's how doctors can see your skeleton. It's like
Yeah.
a shadow puppet show of your insides almost.
Uh-huh. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so X-rays, they're good for bones.
Right.
What about gamma radiation? That one always sounds kind of scary.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Gamma radiation is definitely the most powerful of the bunch.
Whoa.
Yeah, it has incredible penetrating power, can travel super far.
Hmm.
Like, if radiation was a superhero, gamma would be it.
Uh-huh. I love that.
Right.
But if it's that powerful, how do we stop it?
Well, luckily for us, again,
Yeah.
our atmosphere absorbs most of the gamma radiation that's coming from space.
Okay, that's good.
But down here on Earth, if we need to shield against gamma radiation, we use dense materials like lead.
So lead is like gamma radiation's kryptonite.
Uh-huh, exactly.
Okay, makes sense. All right, next up. Alpha radiation.
Okay.
The article described alpha particles as helium nuclei, which...
Yeah, they are. 2 protons, 2 neutrons, all bound together.
Right, but helium, that's what makes balloons float. It's light.
Right. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah. So how can something that makes balloons float also be dangerous?
Well, see, alpha particles, they are heavy, and they have a strong positive charge,
Okay.
but they're actually easy to stop.
Huh.
Yeah. A sheet of paper can block them.
What? Really?
Uh-huh. The danger with alpha radiation comes when it gets inside your body.
Okay, so they're not strong enough to, like, break in. But
Right.
once they're in, watch out.
Exactly. Like, think about radon gas. Yeah, it's this radioactive gas. You find it naturally in some soils.
Okay.
And it emits alpha particles.
Uh-huh.
So if radon gets into your house, you breathe it in.
Right.
It can increase your risk of lung cancer.
Yikes. That's scary.
Yeah, so it's important to get those radon levels checked, make sure everything's good.
For sure. Okay, what about beta radiation? What's that one all about?
So beta radiation, it's made up of energetic electrons.
Okay.
They're lighter than alpha particles, and they can penetrate further. Like if you think of alpha, beta, and gamma as siblings,
Uh-huh.
beta is kind of the middle child.
Oh.
Not as bulky as alpha, not as superpowered as gamma,
Okay.
but still, capable of causing some damage.
So, like, do we need lead suits to block beta radiation?
No, nothing like that.
Phew.
Thin sheets of metal, that's usually enough to stop them.
Okay, good.
And like the other types of radiation.
Yeah.
Beta radiation also has medical applications. Like doctors use it to treat some types of skin cancer.
Wow, it's so interesting. Something that can be harmful can also be used to heal.
It is. It's all about how we use it, right?
Right. Okay, last but not least, we've got neutron radiation.
Okay.
The article mentioned that neutrons are rare, but can be super dangerous.
Yeah, they are a bit tricky. So neutrons, they're unique because they don't have an electrical charge. That means they can penetrate way deeper into materials than like alpha or beta particles. Think of them like stealthy ninjas, just slipping past defenses, going straight for the nucleus of an atom.
So that's how they cause damage.
It is.
Okay, those definitely sound scary.
Yeah, they can be. And to shield against neutrons, you often need materials rich in hydrogen, like water or concrete.
Wow, so it's like we've got this whole army of radiation types.
Right.
Each one with its own strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. It's a whole world down there at the atomic level.
Wow, my head's spinning a bit.
Yeah.
So we've covered ionizing radiation pretty well, I think.
I think so, too.
But what about its less energetic cousin, non-ionizing radiation?
Ah, yes. Now that's a whole other story.
Right.
And it's one we encounter every single day, whether we realize it or not.
Oh, wow. Well, I definitely want to hear more about that.
Oh, we'll get into it. Don't worry.
This is fascinating.
It is. Radiation is everywhere, and it's more important than we realize.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right, so non-ionizing radiation, we got to talk about that.
Yeah, definitely.
You said it's something we experience every single day.
We do. It's everywhere.
But is it as harmful as the ionizing stuff?
Well, it doesn't have that same intense energy, But that doesn't mean it has zero effect on us.
So it's not as strong, but it can still mess with our bodies.
In a way, yeah. Think of it like this.
Okay.
You're standing in a field, right?
Okay, I'm there.
Ionizing radiation, that's like a bolt of lightning striking the ground.
Oh.
Powerful, destructive.
Right.
Non-ionizing, it's more like the warmth of the sun on your skin.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a much better image.
Right, much gentler energy.
So what are some examples of, everyday non-ionizing radiation?
Let's see. Well, radio waves.
Radio waves, okay.
Microwaves, infrared radiation.
Okay. Oh, and even visible light.
Wait, what? Visible light, like from the sun?
Uh-huh.
That's radiation.
It is. It's all part of the electromagnetic spectrum.
The what now?
The electromagnetic spectrum. But think of it like it's a giant map of all the different types of electromagnetic radiation.
Oh, okay.
It goes from, super low energy radio waves all the way up to those high-energy gamma rays.
Oh, so it's like the whole range.
Exactly.
So the electromagnetic spectrum is like a rainbow of radiation.
You could say that.
Ionizing on one end, non-ionizing on the other.
Yeah, and just like in a rainbow, where the colors blend together,
Right.
the different types of radiation on the spectrum, they kind of overlap too.
Okay, I'm starting to get it now.
Good.
So radio waves, microwaves, infrared, visible light, they're all on the non-ionizing side, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, well, let's break it down a bit. First up, radio waves. I know they're used for, like, communication and stuff.
Right.
But how does that actually work?
It's kind of cool. Radio waves, they're like the messengers of the electromagnetic spectrum.
Okay.
They can travel super far, and they carry information with them.
Hmm.
That's why we can use them for radio broadcasts, TV, cell phones, even GPS.
Wow, so all that stuff relies on radio waves.
It does.
That's kind of wild. It's like these invisible waves are zipping around us constantly.
They are. It's how we stay connected.
That's incredible. Okay, what about microwaves? I mean, obviously we use those to heat up food, but like, how do they actually do that?
So microwaves are actually a type of radio wave.
Oh, okay.
But they're shorter.
Right.
And when they hit your food, they cause the water molecules in the food to vibrate.
Mm-hmm.
And that vibration, that creates heat.
Oh, so it's not like the microwaves themselves are hot.
No.
What's the energy they transfer to the water?
Wow, so it's like my leftover pizza is getting a tiny massage.
Haha, basically.
It's like a very focused type of heating.
It is. That's why it cooks so fast.
Okay, next up, infrared.
Yeah.
You said we experience that as heat, right?
Yeah. Think about like the warmth you feel from a fire
Oh, yeah.
or a heating pad.
Right.
That's infrared.
So infrared is like this invisible heat wave that we can feel.
It is.
Wow, and it's used in other stuff too, right?
It is like night vision goggles.
Oh, right.
Those detect infrared radiation, basically the heat signature of objects.
Oh, that's so cool.
And infrared plays a really important role in regulating temperature on Earth.
Huh. The more you know.
Right. It's everywhere.
So we've got radio waves, microwaves, infrared, and then, of course, visible light.
Right. The one we can actually see.
It's kind of crazy to think that light is a form of radiation. You know?
I know.
Yeah.
But it is. It's just a very, very narrow band on that whole electromagnetic spectrum.
Okay. But you mentioned earlier that even non-ionizing radiation can still affect us.
It can, yeah.
How so? I thought it couldn't break chemical bonds or ionize atoms.
It can't.
Okay.
But it can still transfer energy to your tissues.
Right.
And that can cause heating.
Oh, okay.
Like think about a sunburn.
Oh, yeah.
That's from too much UV radiation.
Right.
And UV is on the lower energy end of the spectrum.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just about ionizing or non-ionizing.
Right.
Then it's also about how much exposure you get.
Exactly. Intensity and duration, those matter too.
Okay, so like moderation is key.
It is. It's like anything else. Too much of a good thing can be bad for you.
True. Even sunshine can be harmful if you get too much.
Exactly.
So we got to be smart about protecting ourselves.
We do.
Wow, this whole electromagnetic spectrum thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty complex.
It is. It's like a whole other world.
But it's fascinating, like all these different types of radiation all around us,
I know, right?
and we just go about our day totally oblivious.
It's pretty amazing.
It is. But okay, so we know about these different types of radiation.
Mm-hmm.
But like, how does this actually affect our lives, like in the real world?
That's a great question. You know, radiation, it's not just a scientific concept.
Right.
It has real-world applications in so many fields, like medicine, energy, even archaeology.
Okay, well, I definitely want to dive into that.
Let's do it.
This is incredible.
I know, right? Radiation is everywhere, and it affects us more than we realize.
Absolutely. Okay, so radiation in the real world, like beyond the sciencey stuff.
Yeah. You know, it's used everywhere.
We were talking about medicine before the break.
Uh-huh.
X-rays, that's kind of the classic example, right?
It is. But there's so much more.
Okay, like what?
Well, there's this thing called nuclear medicine.
Nuclear medicine.
Yeah. It uses these tiny, tiny amounts of radioactive materials.
Yeah.
They're called radio tracers.
Radio tracers, what are those?
So imagine like a microscopic beacon, right?
Okay.
And it's emitting gamma rays.
Hmm.
Doctors can inject these radio tracers, or you can swallow them, even inhale them.
Oh.
And then they use special cameras to track where they go in your body.
So it's like a GPS tracker, but for your insides.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
That's wild.
It's so cool. And it helps doctors see how your organs and tissues are working.
So they can like diagnose stuff?
Oh, yeah. All sorts of things like heart problems, cancer, bone health, thyroid issues, you name it.
Wow, so it's super versatile.
It is.
And then there's radiation therapy.
Right.
That's for treating cancer.
Yeah, radiation therapy is huge in cancer treatment. They use targeted doses of radiation to actually kill the cancer cells,
Yeah.
but they try to do minimal damage to the healthy tissue around it.
So it's like a super precise weapon.
Yeah, like a microscopic sniper.
That's a great analogy. But even though it's being used for good,
Yeah.
there are still risks, right?
Of course there are.
Like with anything powerful, I guess.
Exactly. You always got to be careful.
Yep.
And with medical radiation, there are side effects, some short-term, some long-term. Doctors are very careful, to minimize any unnecessary exposure.
Right.
But it's always a balance, weighing the benefits against the risks.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like the key is responsible use, right?
Absolutely.
So medicine is just one area where radiation is important.
Right.
What about other fields? Like the article mentions something called neutron activation analysis.
Oh, yeah. That's a cool one.
What is that?
It's like fingerprinting, but for materials.
Okay.
They use neutron radiation to figure out what elements are in a sample. That's super precise.
So what's it used for?
Oh, all sorts of things. Archaeology, art history, geology.
Whoa. Okay. So like they can use radiation to tell if an artifact is real?
They can.
Or like what a meteorite is made of?
Exactly. It's super helpful for researchers.
That's amazing. Like radiation is so versatile.
It really is.
But okay, even with all these cool uses,
Yeah.
we can't forget about the dangers, right?
You can't.
Like the article talked about how high levels of exposure can be harmful.
Right. It's important to remember that. The natural background radiation, that's usually fine.
Oh, okay.
But when you start getting higher levels of exposure, that's when it becomes a problem.
So, like, what kinds of things protect us?
Well, there are regulations in place, for workplaces, for the public.
Right, to make sure people aren't exposed to too much.
Exactly. And we have to be careful about how we dispose of radioactive waste.
Right, so we don't contaminate the environment.
Exactly. We got to think about the long-term consequences, too.
Absolutely. It's like, we have all this knowledge about radiation now, both the good and the bad.
Right.
So how do we live with it?
I think it's all about awareness.
Right.
We have to stay informed, learn about the different sources of radiation,
Right.
support policies that prioritize safety, and keep pushing for cleaner, safer technologies.
It's not about being scared of radiation.
Right.
It's
Right.
about understanding it.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
Yeah.
Radiation is a natural part of our universe.
It is.
And it can do so much good. But we got to be smart about it, use it responsibly.
Minimize the risks, maximize the benefits.
Exactly.
Well, this has been incredible. We've learned so much.
I know, right?
It's amazing to think that something we can't even see can have such a huge impact on our world.
It really is. And it just shows you how much we still have to learn.
Absolutely. There's always more to discover. Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of radiation.
It was my pleasure.
I hope you learned something new, and maybe you even see radiation a little differently now.
I hope so, too.
Until next time, keep exploring and stay curious. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into something you specifically requested: conspiracy theories. You want to know more about why they're so captivating, why people believe them, and we're going to unpack some sources you provided, especially that Wikipedia article on conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's interesting because conspiracy theories, they're not new, are they? I mean, they've been around for centuries, different cultures, popping up throughout history, especially, it seems, during times of uncertainty and upheaval when people are looking for answers and explanations.
So let's start basic then. What even is a conspiracy theory?
Well, the Wikipedia article defines it as an explanation for an event or situation that claims a powerful group of people are working together in secret to make it happen.
And that's where it gets tricky, right? Because we're talking about the difference between an actual conspiracy, like Watergate, which really happened, and a conspiracy theory.
You're right. Real conspiracies do exist. The difference is a conspiracy theory often uses weak evidence and tends to see bad intentions everywhere. It downplays things like randomness and coincidence. Like, there's always some puppet master in control.
And those puppet masters are usually up to no good, right? It creates that us versus them kind of feeling.
Exactly. Conspiracy theories love to paint the world in black and white. Powerful, evil, them against the ordinary people.
I have to admit, there's a part of me, and maybe this is true for a lot of people, where that secret knowledge aspect is kind of alluring, feeling like you've got this inside scoop that most people don't.
Oh, for sure. It taps into wanting to feel like we're in the know. And what's really interesting, the more out there and unusual a theory is, the more some people seem drawn to it.
It's like you almost want to be proven right, even if it means the world is a much darker place than we thought. So we know conspiracy theories are old news and that they offer this tempting sense of knowing a hidden truth. But why are they so common? What is it about us that makes these explanations, even when they sound pretty far-fetched, so appealing?
Well, the Wikipedia article actually breaks it down into three main levels of appeal.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, they offer simple answers to complicated questions. For instance, rather than accepting that something like, say, a global pandemic is really complex, a conspiracy theory might say it's all a plan by some powerful group with their own agenda.
So instead of just randomness, you get this reassuring feeling that someone's steering the ship, even if it's in a bad direction. It's like order out of chaos.
Exactly. The second level is how they often tap into wanting a clear moral story, good versus evil. Like, think about how many stories use this. The brave few who know the truth against the big bad.
It's like we're hardwired to root for the underdog. Classic storytelling for a reason.
Right. And finally, and we've touched on this, there's the appeal of having that secret knowledge. Believing makes you part of a special group. You've got info most people don't, like a decoder ring, helping you see the hidden messages in everything.
And that feeling of exclusivity can be really powerful.
Absolutely. But while these simple explanations can be comforting, it's important to consider the potential downsides. The Wikipedia article also highlights the dangers of widespread conspiracy thinking.
Which is a perfect segue because we've been talking about the allure, but what happens when those beliefs have real-world consequences?
Well, that's where things can become dangerous. Conspiracy theories can have very real and often detrimental consequences, leading to things like vaccine refusal, political violence, and even hindering public health efforts. The article mentions the South African AIDS crisis as a stark example. Government officials embraced the conspiracy theory that AIDS was not caused by HIV, leading to devastating consequences for their people.
That's a truly heartbreaking example. It's easy to forget that these theories aren't just harmless speculation. They can have a direct and lasting impact on people's lives.
Absolutely. And beyond the individual harm, conspiracy theories can erode trust in institutions and experts. This makes it harder to address real problems and have productive conversations because when everyone is suspicious of everyone else, finding common ground and working together towards solutions becomes incredibly difficult.
So how do we navigate this complex landscape? What can we do when faced with harmful conspiracy theories, particularly when they're coming from friends or family members? What does the article suggest?
It's tough, but not impossible. The article suggests avoiding direct confrontation. Treating it like a debate is more likely to make the person defensive and more entrenched in their beliefs rather than open to considering other viewpoints.
So bombarding someone with logic and facts is probably not the most effective strategy.
Exactly. Instead, try to find common ground. For example, maybe you both agree that government transparency is important or that critical thinking is crucial. Start from shared values and build understanding from there. Using these as starting points can lead to a more nuanced and productive conversation.
It's more about gently guiding them out of the darkness, rather than hitting them with a floodlight of facts and logic.
Precisely. And remember, encourage critical thinking, but don't mock or belittle them. Help them apply that skepticism to the theory itself. Ask open-ended questions like, what evidence would convince you otherwise? Or, have you considered this alternative perspective?
So it's more about planting seeds of doubt and encouraging them to question their own assumptions, rather than trying to force-feed them the truth.
Exactly. It's a delicate process that requires patience and empathy, but it is possible to help someone break free from the grip of a conspiracy theory, and approaching the conversation in a way that fosters respect and understanding is essential.
We've talked about the individual, but on a larger scale, are there any positives that come from this type of thinking? Or are they purely a negative force?
While it's important to acknowledge the very real dangers, it's also fair to point out that in incredibly rare cases, conspiracy theories can expose genuine wrongdoing. Think of the whistleblowers who brought to light government surveillance programs, for example. These individuals were initially dismissed by some as conspiracy theorists, but were later proven right.
So it's not always a case of paranoia gone wild.
Not always. But those instances are the exception, not the rule. The vast majority of conspiracy theories distract from real solutions and make it harder to address the root causes of problems. It's crucial to remember that while they might feel empowering on an individual level, they can have a detrimental impact on society as a whole.
It definitely seems like there's a delicate balance to strike between acknowledging the anxieties and desires that fuel these beliefs while also addressing their potential to cause real harm.
Absolutely. And understanding the psychology behind these theories, why they're so appealing, and the potential consequences is crucial for navigating these complex issues.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground here today. Conspiracy theories are clearly more complex than they seem. We've learned that they're fueled by real emotions and anxieties and a desire for simple answers in a complicated world, but also that they can have dangerous consequences. They can distort our understanding of the world, erode trust in institutions, and even lead to real-world harm.
It's a really important topic, and I'm glad we had the opportunity to dive into it today. It's easy to dismiss them as outlandish or irrational, but I think it's crucial to remember that they often stem from genuine concerns and anxieties. Understanding those underlying factors is essential for having more productive conversations about these complex issues.
I completely agree. So the next time you encounter a conspiracy theory, don't just ask yourself, is this true? Ask yourself, what purpose does this belief serve for the person who holds it? And maybe, just maybe, that understanding can be the first step towards bridging the divide and having a more productive conversation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's easy to get caught up in trying to be right, prove or disprove something, when actually taking a step back, trying to get why someone believes what they do, that's going to be way more helpful.
I think so. It's about realizing people who get into conspiracy theories, they're often looking for something they feel is missing. Could be a sense of order, a clear good versus bad story, even just feeling like they belong. Understanding that is key to having better conversations.
So for our listener and anyone else who's thinking about this stuff, what are some big takeaways we want to leave them with today? Well, first off, we can't forget that conspiracy theories, they're not always harmless. There can be real consequences for people, for whole societies even.
Like that tragic example we talked about with the AIDS crisis in South Africa.
Exactly. But important to remember, too, people who believe these things, they're not always, stupid or crazy. Often it's coming from genuine worry, a need to make sense of things when the world feels messy.
That's why how we talk about this stuff matters so much. Coming from a place of empathy, not trying to win an argument, but finding common ground, getting people to think critically.
Couldn't agree more. Having these conversations the right way, with respect, it could be how we start to bridge that gap, create a world where people are more informed, more understanding.
Well said. And on that note, time for us to come back up from this deep dive. Hope this was insightful, everyone. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and we'll catch you on our next deep dive into PANA, or whatever fascinating topic we uncover next.
All right, so buckle up because today we're heading straight into the Amazon rainforest.
Deep into the Amazon. And we're going way beyond those breathtaking waterfalls and those classic canopy shots you see everywhere.
Yeah, we're talking a real deep dive here.
We're digging into the Amazon's hidden history, its incredible biodiversity, and, of course, the very real challenges it's facing today.
And to navigate this journey, we'll be using the Wikipedia article on the Amazon rainforest, last updated on September 26, 2024.
Our trusty guide through this incredible ecosystem.
So when you think Amazon, what comes to mind? Most people picture this untouched paradise of pristine wilderness.
Right, this idea that's practically untouched by humans. But what if that picture we all have, is incomplete?
What if there's more to the story?
Well, for decades, the prevailing theory, the one really pushed by archaeologist Betty Meggers, was that the Amazon soil was just too poor to support large, complex societies.
So the idea was small, scattered tribes just trying to eke out a living.
Exactly. They were mainly hunter-gatherers because, large-scale agriculture, forget it, the soil just wouldn't allow for it. But, and this is where it gets interesting, recent discoveries have completely challenged this whole theory.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What kind of discoveries are we talking about? What did they find?
Evidence of ancient civilizations, and not just small ones. We're talking large settlements, complex societies. Archaeologists are even finding traces of roads and bridges hidden under the jungle.
Wow, it's like stumbling upon a lost city in the middle of the rainforest.
It is. And it doesn't stop there. There are these huge geoglyphs, these incredible earthworks, some so massive you can only see them from the air. And these designs, they were likely made over 1,000 years ago, and they suggest a level of organization and ingenuity. I mean, it's really unexpected.
So not just surviving, but thriving. But if these civilizations were so advanced, what happened? Did they just vanish?
That's the million-dollar question,
Mm.
and this is where it gets really, really interesting. See, the evidence suggests that these pre-Columbian civilizations, they weren't just living in the rainforest, they were actively managing it.
Really? How so?
They used practices like forest gardening, which is intentionally cultivating useful plants within the rainforest ecosystem.
So they were working with the rainforest, not against it.
Exactly. And then there's this incredible discovery, terra preta, this super fertile soil, so rich in nutrients that it's actually considered an artifact of human intervention.
They were basically engineering super soil.
Yeah.
That's incredible. It really changes how you see the Amazon.
It really does. It shows that it's not just this pristine wilderness, but a place shaped by humans for centuries, maybe even millennia.
It adds a whole new layer to the story.
Absolutely. And that deep connection between humans and the Amazon isn't just a thing of the past. It's still happening today, but, well, in more complex ways now. But we can get into that a little later.
So we've uncovered this hidden history, but now let's dive into what the Amazon is most known for. I mean, its incredible biodiversity.
Get ready to be amazed, because the Amazon is like this planet's biodiversity vault. Think about it. A single square kilometer can be home to 40,000 different plant species. Just let that sink in for a second. 40,000.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that number. That's
See-
just wow. And that's just plants. We're not even talking about the animals yet.
Not even close. We haven't gotten to the animals. We're talking 2.5 million insect species by some estimates.
Seriously.
Birds, fish, mammals, reptiles, amphibians. It's an explosion of life. Every color you can imagine.
You've got to give us some highlights here. Paint us a picture. What are some of the most unique creatures we might find in the Amazon?
Okay, well, let's start with a creature that seems like it's straight out of the dinosaur era. The hoatzin bird.
Okay, what's so special about the hoatzin bird?
They're chicks. They actually have claws on their wings.
Claws on their wings.
Yeah, it's incredible. They use those claws to clamber around branches, almost like little reptilian climbers.
Mhm.
Oh, and they have these bright red eyes.
Okay, that's both amazing and slightly terrifying, like a prehistoric flashback or something. Okay, what else have you got? What else have you got?
Okay, well, how about the giant Amazonian centipede? We're not talking about your average, your average creepy crawly here. This thing can grow to be over a foot long.
Over a foot long. No, thank
They're
you.
lightning fast, and they have a bite to match their size.
Yeah, I think I'll admire that one from a safe distance. But the Amazon isn't all about those creepy crawlies, is it? I mean, it's beautiful, right?
Of course, it's incredibly beautiful. It's a symphony of color and life. Take the heliconia flowers, for instance.
The heliconia
Mhm.
flowers.
They come in this huge variety of vibrant colors and patterns, and if you're lucky, you might catch them swaying in the breeze as hummingbirds flit from flower to flower.
I can practically hear the Rainforest Symphony playing in my head right now. It sounds so peaceful. But it's not all beauty, is it? There's a dark side to this paradise, right?
You're right, the Amazon faces a lot of challenges, and one of the biggest is deforestation. And it's not just about losing trees, it's disrupting this incredibly delicate balance that's been like centuries in the making.
Well, let's talk about that. Deforestation. It's a term we hear a lot, but for someone who's never been to the Amazon, what does that actually look like on the ground? I mean, what are we talking about?
Imagine huge swaths of rainforest just cleared for agriculture. And then there's logging and mining operations too.
So they're just tearing it all down.
Yeah. One of the biggest drivers of this is actually the global demand for things like soybeans. They're often grown in areas that were once rainforest.
It's like this need for resources is just putting so much pressure on the Amazon.
Exactly. And then you have the impact of infrastructure projects, roads, dams. These things fragment the rainforest and make it even more vulnerable.
So it's not just about the trees themselves, but everything they support.
It's the whole web of life. And every tree that's cut down, every acre of rainforest that's cleared, it has these ripple effects throughout the whole ecosystem.
And the consequences are huge, right? This isn't just an Amazon problem.
No, not at all. The Amazon plays a critical role in regulating the global climate.
Right, it's like the Earth's lungs, taking in carbon dioxide and releasing oxygen.
That's the analogy we often hear, but it's actually more accurate to think of it as this massive carbon vault. The Amazon stores huge amounts of carbon dioxide, and that prevents it from entering the atmosphere and contributing to climate change.
So when we cut down the rainforest, we're basically unlocking that vault. and releasing all that stored carbon.
Exactly. It's like setting fire to a library of carbon, releasing it back into the atmosphere, and just making the problem worse.
That's a pretty terrifying thought. But before we get too bogged down in the doom and gloom, are there any positive developments, any signs of hope for the Amazon?
Oh, there are. There definitely are. It's not too late for things to change. In recent years, we've seen a real surge in conservation efforts, especially with indigenous communities leading the charge.
That's something I've always found fascinating, that deep connection indigenous communities have with the rainforest.
It's a connection that stretches back thousands of years. These communities, they have this invaluable knowledge about the rainforest. They understand its rhythms, its balance, and they're really at the forefront of sustainable practices. They're combining traditional knowledge with modern technology to protect their ancestral lands.
It's amazing to see them taking such an active role. Do you have any specific examples of that? So they're blending ancient wisdom with like cutting-edge tech. That's really interesting. Tell me more about how they're doing that.
So many tribes now use satellite imagery and drones, and they use them to monitor their territories.
To actually see what's happening.
Exactly. They're looking for illegal logging, mining, any kind of encroachment.
They can see it all happening from above.
It's like having eyes in the sky. They're using that data to protect their home.
That's incredible. It's like a kind of, well, a beacon of hope, you know?
It really is, and it shows how much we can learn from indigenous communities about living in balance with nature.
Their voices are so important in this fight for the Amazon.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about deforestation, but then there's this, well, this looming threat of climate change, right? How do those two forces, how do they collide in the Amazon?
It's a dangerous combination, kind of a vicious cycle. As global temperatures rise and we see these shifting weather patterns, the Amazon becomes more vulnerable. Droughts, fires, they become even more frequent and intense.
And those events are often made worse by deforestation, right?
Exactly. And they further release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It's like this self-fueling cycle.
So it's like a 1-2 punch. Deforestation weakens the rainforest, and then climate change just sort of swoops in.
That's a good way to put it. And scientists are really concerned about this phenomenon called, well, it's called savanization.
Savanization. Okay, that sounds intense. What exactly does that mean?
Imagine the rainforest, this lush, vibrant ecosystem, slowly transforming into a drier grassland, more prone to fires.
Like watching the rainforest fade away.
In a way, yes. And it would be disastrous for the Amazon's biodiversity.
Because all those plants and animals, they depend on the rainforest, right?
They depend on that unique ecosystem that would survive such a dramatic change. And the consequences go way beyond the Amazon.
Right, back to that global impact.
Exactly. Savannas just don't store carbon the same way rainforests do. This transformation would release even more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
And speed up climate change even more. It's a domino effect with, well, potentially huge consequences. It can feel overwhelming, you know, all these challenges. But there's still hope, right? People are working to protect the Amazon.
Absolutely. There is hope. It's not too late. We've seen some really positive steps, like, did you know the area of protected areas in the Amazon has tripled since the early 2000s?
Really? That's a significant change.
Governments and conservation organizations, they're working together to create these massive reserves and national parks,
Yeah,
trying to protect the ecosystem.
that's good to hear. It's not just about the problems, it's about the solutions, too.
Exactly.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all. There are other, well, glimmers of hope. Ecotourism, for instance. It's a way for people to experience the wonder of the Amazon, but in a way that supports local communities and conservation efforts.
So you get to see the beauty of the rainforest and contribute to its well-being.
A win-win.
I like it. Are there other examples like that, of that kind of win-win approach?
Yeah, there's a real push towards sustainable practices. Sustainable agriculture, forestry.
So being more mindful of the impact.
Farmers and businesses are realizing that protecting the rainforest makes sense. It helps preserve the soil, it prevents erosion, it maintains that delicate balance. It's good for everyone.
Shifting from short-term gain to long-term sustainability.
It's about the long game. Recognizing that a healthy rainforest, well, it benefits everyone.
It really does. So we've journeyed through the Amazon's hidden history, its amazing biodiversity, the challenges, the glimmers of hope. What's the takeaway here? What should people listening to this, even if they're, halfway across the world, what should they take away from all of this?
It comes down to this. How can we balance economic development with being responsible?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that the Amazon, with all its wonders, its resources, can thrive, not just now, but for generations to come.
It's a big question and a conversation we all need to be part of.
We all have a part to play in the Amazon story, and it's still being written.
It's been an amazing journey into the Amazon. This deep dive has reminded us that it's more than just a rainforest. It's a treasure of history, of life, and it's vital for our planet.
And its future depends on us, on the choices we make today.
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. We hope you've gained a new appreciation for the Amazon rainforest. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and until next time, keep learning.